That's my secret, cat. I'm always angry.
Alright. I ran out of patience. On the roost!
Hey everyone, Captain, big fan of Spider-Man.
Avengers! Assemble. Hello, Peter.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is Jack Seepershout. How are you?
Hello again for the second recording in a row.
Second recording in a row. We're spacing these out over a week, so people have more MCU content throughout this delays. We still don't know when the next show is. Most people think Moon Knight sometime in March or spring, but that hasn't been officially announced. And what we do know is that Miss Marvel is supposed to be Q4, which is starting in July. Did I say Captain Marvel? Miss Marvel? I don't know what I said.
No, you said Miss Marvel.
Good.
You got it right.
All right. Miss Marvel is apparently also undergoing reshoots that are pretty extensive right now, so we don't know. I'm assuming it'll still make its date, but I don't think Moon Knight or She-Hulk had to do as extensive reshoots or anything. So I think we'll get those shows first. But who knows? She-Hulk probably has to do a lot of post-production with
for sure.
for She-Hulk, and potentially seeing Professor Hulk. So definitely something to keep an eye on as next time we have any sort of news, I'll jump on here and talk some news, I guess. But you know what? Watch it happen between this week break now that I'm putting these up separately. But whenever we find out when those shows are, we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, last week we had Jack on. We talked our MCU heroes starting 11. Maybe one time we'll do a villains one.
Could be interesting.
At some point. That'd be very interesting. But right now, we're going to be talking our trilogy rankings. There's only been 4, right?
Right.
4 trilogies. So we're going to rank the trilogies of the MCU. And then we're also going to create our own trilogy with either similar themes or plot lines that, go in a overarching story and create our own sort of trilogy with movies that are not part of the same series, like a Thor film maybe in a trilogy with Captain America movies, and you don't know why that is. That's not one of my picks because I don't think that actually would ever work, but yeah, so I'm excited to talk about that. But how's everything been going on your end, Jack?
Very good. Reading some comics lately, getting into that.
That's what we should do one time. If you send me the Daredevil ones you have, like not mailing them, I mean just
right.
choose. I can look to see if I have them on Unlimited or whatever, and we can kind of talk about maybe Daredevil and how maybe they're going to bring him into this MCU or whatever.
Well, that would be awesome because they've brought him in to an extent, but
so far we've only seen Matt.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is a variant of him that isn't Daredevil. That would be very disappointing.
I'm sure that's not the case.
that would be the most disappointing thing since what is it in WandaVision? Ralph Boner. That's it.
What though? I love the Ralph Boner thing.
It is.
I love how much it upsets people.
It's hilarious because everyone was like, "Oh, Mephisto's coming, and it's gonna be a huge thing." And then Kevin Feige was like, "Haha, no."
It's funny though, just to not go off on a tangent here, but I do think that fit thematically of him being a person who was also brainwashed like the rest of the civilians. So for me, I thought it worked. I thought it worked fine, but it was this almost like mystery thing where people were really building it up in their heads. And when it was originally announced that he was coming back to play Quicksilver, like from leakers and stuff, people were really thinking we were going multiverse, which we haven't really gotten from Wanda. Everybody thought that was going to start with the WandaVision show.
We got
and it wasn't about that at all.
We got a little bit of it at in the very end credits of Wanda.
Yeah, I guess technically. I mean, I don't. Yeah, she's hearing the voices of her children, which are probably coming from another universe. But everybody thought Wanda was like gonna break something that Strange had to fix, but then that wasn't the case. And then everybody thought Peter was going to do something that Strange had to fix, and that wasn't the case. Like, Strange was equally an issue in that, and they fixed it. There's no more leak, so now we have to figure out how that's how do we get the multiverse for a third time now? It's interesting. But yeah, you were talking. Sorry about reading comics.
Yeah, so I've read a few Daredevil comics, issue 187 and 204. 187 especially has a fantastic cover. Big fan of it. I'm gonna get it framed. Like, that's how much I like it. It's a perfect white background. It doesn't have the barcode or anything on it as well, so it's completely clean.
Yeah, it's a comic shop copy for people that don't know. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did not know. So there you go. That's good information.
Yeah. So they made two copies of each. They made a newsstand copy which had the UPC, so it could be sold at newsstands and like Barnes and Nobles and stuff. And then they have a copy which is in the comic shops and like that you would get mailed if you had a subscription that does not have that on there, and instead it's just like a white Spider-Man logo.
Yep. That is what it has on it. And I'm also a huge fan, if you remember, of Doctor Strange. So got the Doctor Strange Epic Collection, the origins of Doctor Strange. I wonder if it has the exact issues that it has in there. It does. Strange Tales number 110 to number 146, as well as Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2. So that's what's included in the Epic Collection there. That runs from July 1963 to July 1966. So 3 years of Doctor Strange comics in this one book. Got it for $20, which was a great deal.
Yeah, they were having sales on those Epic collections for some of them that you got. And then, I don't know, last time we did Spider-Man, I don't know. No, probably not. But the Marvel Masterworks had like a digital sale on Comixology until the 3rd of January. Volume 1s would be 99 cents, and Volume 2s and onward were like $1.99. So I bought too many of them. I have. Well, you have to be careful when you're on Comixology. Looking at the list of this stuff, there is. I thought I was clicking the next page, but I clicked buy instantly, and I ended up buying Marvel Golden Age Comics Masterwork Volume 7, and I don't have any of the other volumes, and I wasn't really looking at that one. But that was $2. I'm not getting back at this point. But here's some of the ones I got. Volume 1 through 22 of the Spider-Man Masterworks. I have Spectacular Spider-Man Masterwork Volume 1. Avengers Masterworks Volume 1, 2, and 3. I have Fantastic Four Masterworks through Volume 8.
Okay.
And I have X-Men Masterworks through Volume 3 and Uncanny X-Men Masterworks through Volume 3. I got Silver Surfer Volume 1, Daredevil Volume 1, Defenders Volume 1, Daredevil Volume 2, Howard the Duck. I had to get Howard the Duck. It was 99 cents. I was like, I'm getting this.
Okay.
I was like, I'm getting this one. And then that's it. So I don't, how many is that I bought? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, plus 22. What was that, 47?
Yep, 47.
I had a $30 gift card and I had some Christmas money. So I bought a lot of these.
Yeah.
But really excited for these.
I will say, the other one I got, my favorite superhero, obviously, Ant-Man. There's this one, the Astonishing Ant-Man Complete Collection, which is, it's all Scott Lang. So if you know anything about Ant-Man in the comics, you know that that's way better than the alternative of Hank Pym as Ant-Man in the comics. But it has Ant-Man from 2015, numbers 1 through 5, Astonishing Ant-Man 1 through 13, and Annual number 1 and Ant-Man Last Days number 1. So that's what's in this one. This one's about 400 pages. That one, 2015. I don't know about Astonishing Ant-Man when that's from. That doesn't have a date listed in there, but I love the art style of these ones. You know, they look fantastic. I've just flipped through it before I've like started reading it, because I'm reading the Doctor Strange ones first, especially after seeing, Doctor Strange in Spider-Man No Way Home. But, the art style in this one, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm looking. It says 2015 for Astonishing Ant-Man.
Okay, yeah. So I guess
is it written by Nick Spencer?
Yes, it is.
Cool. Yep.
Written by Nick Spencer.
So, there you go. That is the 2015. He's writing. He was writing some of the Amazing Spider-Man recently.
Nice.
That some people did not like, but some people did. I guess. I don't know. Well, I want to thank anybody that found us due to the Spider-Man reviews. We did have Jack on for the first full spoiler review of Spider-Man, and those episodes did all three of the. I did the instant reaction, and then the 2 spoiler reviews are some of the highest of our listeners. So thank you if you're sticking around after that. But speaking of No Way Home, then let's go ahead and rank some of these trilogies, as we just got the Spider-Man Home trilogy wrapped up last month. Hasn't even been a month yet. It's been like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks.
And I've seen it 4 times.
I was on my way to see it 6 times. I don't think I'm going to be able to get there now. I've seen it 3 and then, had to isolate myself. So I've not been able to get back. But I will say, I think I will enjoy it more now than if I'd went 6 straight times, because I've this movie again now that I've been isolating for like 2 weeks. I'm ready to go see it.
Nice.
All right, so let's go ahead and did we want to kind of do this like we did that, where maybe let's start with the bottom and do our least favorite trilogy, and then why that kind of is our least favorite trilogy, and then go upwards.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's a good idea.
Probably have the same one.
Yeah, for the bottom one,
Yeah.
I have a feeling we might. Well, did you want to go first, or should I?
I'll go first, I guess.
Right.
I have Thor as the 4th best trilogy out of the 4 trilogies. I have it broken down here. Thor, I think, is very underrated. I really like Thor 1. Really enjoyed it. Saw it and really thought this is a good movie. I enjoyed it. It was a good origin film, I thought. Thor: The Dark World, it's my least favorite of the MCU films. Well, that and Incredible Hulk are both pretty down there.
That's fair.
So it just bores me. I liked it the first time I saw it in theaters. I really did. I was on my college program. I went with some friends. We were driving home, talking about it like, man, that was a great movie. They just keep knocking him out of the park. And now I'm like, man, that movie was not that great. And anytime I watch it, I just struggle through it. And it's not like it's bad. It's just, it doesn't really know where it's going to go. Part of the issue is that I think Loki was actually supposed to die in that movie, from what I've read.
Yeah.
And then with his popularity of Avengers, they, do the whole fake death thing to make him kind of stick around. And I wasn't upset with that, but I think it makes some of the story meander a bit. Malekith is not a great villain, unfortunately, for Christopher Eccleston, because he's a good actor, but Yeah, for me, I got Dark World as the worst one of the trilogy and the worst of the MCU. Then I have Ragnarok as ending the trilogy on a high point. Thor film made by a mile. Really enjoyed Ragnarok, had a ball with it. And it's going to be really weird if we talk about them as being a trilogy because Love and Thunder is going to be so close to Ragnarok in the sense of tone and stuff that it almost seems like they have to be split up into duologies of Thor and Dark World, and then Ragnarok and Love and Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be weird when we get a fourth film here how we're going to talk about this, but that's my thoughts on the Thor trilogy.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo a lot of the same things because I have Thor in my last place out of 4 still isn't that bad because here's
but it's
what
fourth place for me by a mile. It is
I think it was the easiest one to come up with in this ranking for me, because the first 2 movies just I saw a post about this recently, like the only director that seems to have cared about Thor as a character is really just Taika Waititi. Like that's about it. He's been the director out of the MCU that's treated Thor's character with the most respect, I think, and gotten him the most right and likable. And I think that's great. But unfortunately, Ragnarok, as great of a movie as it is, just can't redeem this trilogy up to get it past that bottom spot for me. You know, what I'm not as high on Thor as you are for the first one. I think it's still a pretty good movie. But it's more like a neutral one. Like it's not one that I'll be like, if I'm going back and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to rewatch an MCU movie. Which one am I going to watch? Thor isn't going to be near the top of the list for me, but it's still like, it's fine enough. Like it's more neutral than anything, I guess, for me. Thor: The Dark World, for me, is just pretty bad. It struggles way too much. It spends too much of the time trying to figure out what kind of movie it needs to be. I think, and I will say this about it, Endgame actively made it a better movie, I feel like. And that's kind of an interesting indictment of it, that where it's featured for like 5 minutes, it does a better job attaching myself to that movie than the movie itself. I do know that there are some people that like it. Specifically, it's one of my dad's favorite MCU movies, apparently. So he really enjoys that one. Jordan, you're still muted, by the way.
Sorry. You know what I think is funny? I thought I clicked on mute, but you know how you talk about how Endgame handles that movie so much better. What's funny, it's the same writers. Marcus and McFeely wrote The Dark World and also wrote Winter Soldier and Civil War and then all the, Infinity War, Endgame. So I do think it's funny that, I mean, they also wrote it with Christopher Yost though too. So maybe that's what drag it down. I don't know. I don't want to throw it in. But I think maybe what it is that the script was probably fine to begin with, and then when things had to get changed with, they changed directors, they had to make Loki a bigger role. I think that may have gotten some of what made Dark World not so interesting.
Yeah. But Thor Ragnarok, great movie. Just really fantastic. Hits everything correctly. Has that perfect balance of humor, action, emotion, just and does a great job at actually like feeling like it's setting up stuff that's going to be meaningful later on in the MCU. I feel like Thor: The Dark World, when you rewatch it, feels a little bit weaker because it doesn't feel like it sets up as much for the future as other MCU projects since then. So I feel like Thor Ragnarok, it has like great. It treats the Hulk as a good character too. Like that's one of the best movies that we've gotten that explores the Hulk, really, which is really interesting. But I just really enjoyed that movie. It's fantastic, and It's the only one of the Thor trilogy, I think, that I will actively like go back and rewatch if I'm not doing a full rewatch of the MCU.
All right, so we'll see where we go from here. I have in third best trilogy, I have the Iron Man trilogy.
All right.
You
I
do
will
not?
say I have it as well. I have that one as well. Yep.
Okay, so Iron Man 1 starts off great. Great start to the MCU. I feel like Tony Zach in this movie, not like best, like you're the best, but like his portrayal and the character, I feel like, is at the most interesting and the best in Iron Man 1. Iron Man 2, most people rank this one as the worst, but that this is, and also one of the worst of the MCU films. This is, I love Iron Man 2. I really do. I think, I'm not sure if it's better than Iron Man 1 for me, but it's definitely up there. I really enjoy Iron Man 2. Intro to Black Widow. We get some Nick Fury in this. We get Justin Hammer as one of the best villains, I think. And I can't wait for him to come back at some point because I just really enjoyed Justin Hammer in this. You know, one of my favorite things is when he's come dancing onto the stage near the end of the movie. It is cracks me up every single time. And, I just really, really enjoyed Iron Man 2. Iron Man 3, now I think you mentioned this. Wasn't that one of your cousin's favorites?
Or my brother really likes
your brother.
that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is my least favorite of the Iron Man films. Okay? This movie does nothing for me, really. And I think I know the reason. Shane Black is the director for this. It feels very different from the Jon Favreau Iron Man films. I'm not one to complain. It's not like I had an issue with the Mandarin reveal, and especially now Shang-Chi really makes that even better that they didn't waste it on the Mandarin being real. And we got Trevor again in Shang-Chi. So like this worked out very well in that regard. But I think Aldrich Killian is a very weak villain. I was really into it when it was the Mandarin, and I thought it was a fine twist. I'm not like, there's a whole bunch of people at that time that were really upset who were comic fans and stuff. My thought was it really blew the steam out of the sails for me of the Mandarin was very menacing when they were doing this, like, oh, it is it's a terrorist and all this kind of stuff. And then it turns out it's just an actor, which again is fine. I'm not having an issue with that. But then the villain that's behind it all, instead of being like even better or more menacing, it's the wizard behind the curtain. It's the man behind the curtain in Oz, and it just deflates the rest of the movie for me. The final battle is literally just a million Iron Man suits flying around. Pepper gets the extremist stuff. It is bizarre at that point, and I'm not a big fan of the final act. And I think that's probably where it falls apart to me. The first two acts, I really dug it. The third act, I think, is just a lot of Iron Man. I get the message of Tony, like, working on himself and having the PTSD. I really enjoy all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the final battle, just him creating and calling all these Iron Man bots, I don't know. It didn't really do it for me. And now this is the one I have watched Iron Man 3 maybe 3 times in my life. I do not revisit a lot at all.
Yeah, those are fair. Those are fair reasoning for all of them. I'm going to repeat a lot, I'm sure, but I mean, Iron Man 1, great introduction to the MCU. I really like it. I think Obadiah Stane is actually a solid villain in that one. I feel like from the very beginning you get the feeling like something's not right with this guy, and it really builds on that throughout the entire thing, and gave us one of the most iconic lines in the MCU. I think Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps. Great line. The delivery on it too, perfect. I really like this. We get introductions to so much to come. We get Phil Coulson in this. We get Nick Fury in the end credits scene. Really, really great introduction to the MCU. and also, of course, blowing the audience's expectations out of the water when Tony actually reveals that he's Iron Man. You know, there's not any really superhero movies before this, or at least major ones
and that wasn't going to
do
be
this.
the case either.
Yeah, like that. This is a brand new thing for superhero movies, that the heroes aren't going to have secret identities, or at least most of them aren't.
And I'm
right?
pretty sure he ad-libbed that.
Yeah, I mean, I would believe it because it sounds kind of ad-libbed, but the delivery just comes off perfectly. So I really think that's awesome how that happened. If it's ad-libbed, that makes this so much better, honestly. So that can only make it better in my mind. But then Iron Man 2, I like it a lot. I like the introduction to Rhodey. I also think that maybe it's because we've gotten him for longer, but Don Cheadle, I think, does a better job than, I think it's Terrence Howard the first time around who plays
next
plays
time
Rhodey.
maybe.
Yeah, I think he does a much better job at it, and I like him a lot more in it. Plus, you know, I do kind of like the subplot in there with, like, you know, he's trying to figure out how to fix the arc reactor and make himself stronger, better. I feel like the final battle, it's decent. I think it's very similar to Iron Man 3 as well, in that there's a lot of, like, I guess it's more like drones flying around that they're fighting, but I also think it makes it a little bit less interesting when they're fighting just like drones and stuff. Then yes, they do eventually fight. It's Ivan, right? I'm pretty sure it's Ivan.
Whiplash,
Whiplash, yeah. But I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan.
Yeah, I felt that was
that one, but
I thought that was more interesting in, like, that the into than, like, the Iron Man 3 fight being at, like, the, what was it, the shipyard or something? I don't know.
Yeah, like a harbor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for Iron Man 3, it's interesting because I really like this. Like, this is so I didn't start watching the MCU movies, like, in theaters until Avengers, because, you know, when I'm sorry to make you feel old here for a second, Jordan, but when Iron Man comes out, I'm 8, so I'm not allowed to watch it yet. So
I was in high school.
Yeah, so
I was in 11th grade.
Yeah, so I didn't start watching it until Avengers. So Iron Man 3 was, like, the first MCU movie besides Avengers with that I got to see, which made it super exciting for me. I remember when like the Lego lines released for it, I got every single set from that. I still have all of them built as well. With like they released, like, one of Tony's mansion and everything with the helicopter attacking it. But the thing is, the Legos did not reflect the movie, because the Mandarin in that was an actual villain, and he had, like, a flamethrower car, and it was incredible. Yeah. If that was an actual thing in the movie, it would have made this movie a lot better. I think some of it's really intriguing. I think, you know, like you said, Tony working through his issues is a very interesting thing, but I feel like all of the stuff that makes it really interesting for me gets undone a lot in Age of Ultron. I feel, because, like, you know, he blows up all his suits at the end of Iron Man 3, and he's like, I'm going to focus on you, Pepper. Then we see him in Age of Ultron in a new suit, and then he has more suits in his Hall of Iron Man suits, and it's like, okay, so you blew up all these suits and said, yeah, I'm focusing on other things now, and then all of a sudden you have 70 more, and I get it, he's still Iron Man, right? But
yeah, I think it fits in the sense of, like, that's who Tony is, and I think they even kind of mentioned this. I'm not sure if Pepper does or not, but, like, how he always has to fix something, and, like, at that point, I think his intention was to focus on Pepper and stuff, but he just can't help it. He just can't help himself.
Yeah, I will say I do like I like the scene, especially where right before we get the Mandarin reveal, where he's buying, like, all of this different stuff to like create, like, gadgets and stuff to break into where he thinks the Mandarin's going to be. That's that's great, and it's a great characterization of Tony Stark, and shows like, this is a really smart guy who can do anything out of just everyday objects, right? Like it shows us the genius part of Tony Stark, and I really enjoy that part. I think I agree with you though that Killian is not a great villain. Probably, I mean, actually not probably, definitely in the bottom half, probably even in the bottom 25% of MCU villains for me.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of in Amazing Spider-Man when they make Jamie Foxx be all ugly, and they do the same thing to Guy Pearce and then make him look better at the like. It looks very same like there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just not. The like you said, the final third act of this, not fantastic. I do like the scene where like where Tony like jumps off the crane and like falls and like gets into the Iron Man suit. That's a really cool scene. That's about all I remember really from the third act of that movie, which I think shows everything you need to know about it there. So yeah, it comes in third place. The first two, I feel like this is the only trilogy for me that has like a downward slope in terms of like how good the movie is. Right. So like Thor starts at a midpoint, goes way down, and then shoots way back up. Iron Man's just a line down, which is unfortunate because I feel like if Jon Favreau directed the third Iron Man movie, we get a way different trilogy.
Yeah, I think it'd be better. I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, according to Deadline here, the line was not scripted. It was a Downey ad lib. The audience reaction gave Marvel Studios the confidence to do it again when they brought Thor to the screen, because in some of the comics, Thor has the secret identity of Dr. Donald Blake, which is why he has the Donald thing on his shirt at one point. Yeah, so the I Am Iron Man was something that they loved and took from him. Worked with how they were going to be doing the secret identities based off of Robert Downey Jr. just making it up.
Yeah, wow. Really incredible.
All right, my number 2 best MCU trilogy. Here we go.
Okay.
The Spider-Man Home trilogy.
You're not going to believe this, but I actually have the same one for that as well.
So we're on the same path.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I have Homecoming, great start to the new MCU Spider-Man, one of my favorite Spider-Man movies ever. I have Far From Home as the weakest of the 3, but still better than the Amazing Spider-Man films for me. And I think it has a great villain in Mysterio. Some of the visuals with Mysterio is great. Seeing Peter Parker in a Netherlands soccer jersey is awesome as well. And then No Way Home, which I've done like 3 or 4 podcasts about already, but of the 3, it's my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, and I think it ends the trilogy at the strongest point and made this a whole origin story trilogy, which I think is beautiful. But yeah, that's how I have Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think Homecoming and Far From Home are both really good Spider-Man movies. But the reason why it's in second place for me is that they don't get to like the elite level of like MCU movies until No Way Home comes out. So I feel like like by themselves, they don't stand as strong as they do when they're considered after considering the events of No Way Home, which brings it down a little bit. But Homecoming, I think the Vulture is one of the better MCU villains that they've introduced. I think they do a good job at showing like, the origin of him as a villain and how far back it goes. And I also like the nod to Donald Glover with Miles Morales, how he inspired the creation of that character playing Miles's uncle. So I think that's a really cool detail that they throw in there. And also as a Community fan, I have to mention that, since that Community and Donald Glover is the reason why that character got its start. So I think Homecoming is very good. But I think I Far From Home, also very good. I saw it in theaters twice, I think, that one, including on opening day. Really, really good movie. I like Mysterio as a villain in it. I also really enjoyed the reveal at the end that Fury and Hill in this movie are Skrulls.
Yes,
because it sets up so much potential for the future. So I was pretty excited to see that. I thought it was very interesting. I will say it's there's a few things in there that I'm not as big of a fan of. I feel like there's a lot of criticism about Spider-Man before No Way Home as being too attached to Iron Man, and his villains are just Iron Man villains that didn't get to fight Tony. And I kind of get that a little bit, but I also appreciate that they're showing that Peter isn't a fully mature hero in this or anything. He's just growing up, and he's trying to figure everything out. So I think it works well, but I also think the whole thing with Tony Tony called my invention barf, and that's why I'm evil now. I'm fun. Cool.
Well, I don't think it's just because of that. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, they're all slighted, right? You
right,
even see the Peter Billingsley character that gets yelled at about that scene that you talked about with the box of scraps. But my one complaint with people that complain about that all the time is that, as I've talked about in the Spider-Man stuff I've done, I think I did this in my instant reaction, all these interpretations are valid now, with the multiverse, right? So if you want to see a Spider-Man that doesn't have anything to do with Iron Man, watch Amazing Spider-Man or Tobey Maguire's.
Yeah.
We've been asking for Spider-Man to be part of this universe for so long. We got it. And then people immediately were like, well, never mind, I don't want. But it was really cool. My mind was blown when Mysterio is not that he's a bad guy. I know he's a bad guy, but I mean, my mind is blown that it went back and he did the barf technology, and that Peter Billingsley character, that they showed the scene from Iron Man again, and that he was there, and all these people that were slighted by Tony were there, because that's how some of this stuff has happened. Kingpin was a Spider-Man villain that has become a Daredevil villain now. It's a precedence in the comics for some of these villains to have a through line from other heroes that then maybe, face each other differently. So, and I think with Iron Man being the godfather of the MCU, one way to make these people seem like they've been around a while is by tying it in to that kind of thing. And I think that, I don't know what else his motivation would be if you're putting Mysterio in on this. And therein lies the issue. I thought they were very creative with how they did that, because otherwise, he just wants to trick Spider-Man? But why then? Did Spider-Man do anything to him? Well, we've barely seen Spider-Man in this universe. It would be hard to be well, Spider-Man caused this. You didn't see it off screen, though. Seeing Jake Gyllenhaal behind the stage of the presentation and stuff was really cool, because now when you go watch Civil War, you're here it is. Here's the origin of Mysterio here.
Yeah.
So
I do agree. I don't think I don't personally think about
no, I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying people that do complain about it all the time.
Yeah, I also think it's kind of weird the whole subplot with what was Brad in it, right? Him being on the school trip and hitting on MJ the whole time, and Peter dealing with that, and they kind of build him up to be something, some kind of not really villain, but an enemy, I guess, of Peter. But they didn't do anything with it, and it's unlikely that they will now, given the events of No Way Home. So it feels like an odd kind of subplot in there. I get some of the reasoning to put it in there, but at the same time, it feels like, I guess it makes sense because, the version of Flash Thompson that they have, it wouldn't make any sense for him to be doing any of this. So
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense, but I also think it's a bit of a strange kind of inclusion in there, but No Way Home, great conclusion to the trilogy. I feel like the Spider-Man trilogy follows the Thor line of like the movies, but it's a lot less drastic, the drop off in the middle there. So yeah, it's just like
it's like a V instead of a U or something, right?
Exactly. It's a linear curve, not an exponential curve.
Right.
That's what it is. And yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic movie. It's in my top 3 MCU movies of all time. No Way Home. It's in 3rd place for me, and it's really good. It introduces the other 2. That would be Captain America: Civil War and Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Okay.
Which you can kind of guess where we're.
Well, I mean, we're only down with one trilogy left.
Yeah,
anyway.
you can guess where we're going then. But I think that No Way Home is just fantastic. It introduces the multiverses in an interesting way and shows how it can function, even if it's not like fully open now, right? It shows how it'll function in the MCU, and I think that's important. It also gives so much fan service and gives so much hope that all of these fan favorite characters that were in non-MCU movies, they could all theoretically come back. Like theoretically, not saying they will, right? I'm not going to say that they will, but they theoretically could. It also gives us more characterization of Doctor Strange.
Bring me
right?
Chickalist. Bring me Mr. Fantastic from the 2005 film.
Chris Evans could come back as the Human Torch.
Bring Jessica Alba. Bring me all of these.
It could all happen, as long as it's not the one from Fan Four Stick in 2015 or whatever.
No.
As long as it's not them, I'm good with that. But great Doctor Strange characterization.
Bring me Tobias Thing. Tobias Funke as the Thing.
Yeah.
Really open up this multiverse.
Imagine a portal opens. It's a random man.
Daddy's got to get his rocks off.
Just that would be the funniest end credit scene, like to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
You get the Russos to direct that because the Russos directed Arrested Development. Yeah,
just could you imagine? That would be it would make so many MCU fans mad. So many of them.
Well, the blue stair car is in Civil War, and Tobias is in the Collector's place in Infinity War.
Yeah, so
as a blue man.
Yeah, there you go. It's just bring it in the variants of Tobias. But I mean, and also it introduces Matt Murdock and to the MCU, No Way Home, which not necessarily related to Spider-Man, but Daredevil's one of my favorite superheroes. So gotta mention.
So, and that's what I want to ask: were you super familiar before the show, or is it the show that's making him climb up those ranks that quickly?
I knew about him a little bit before because he's been in some animated series as well. Yeah. And also I've just heard about him before. But the show is really making him climb up quite a bit as well as reading the comics as well, and has made him climb up as a hero. I think he's a very interesting hero in this, but it's a great conclusion to this Spider-Man trilogy. Gives pretty much a blank slate almost to go off of for the next trilogy of things. You can introduce so many classic Spider-Man villains into it. You can introduce like Gwen Stacy. You could introduce Mary Jane Watson into the universe. Harry Osborn, like a different although actually Harry Osborn doesn't exist potentially.
We don't know that.
Right.
Norman just says my son ... So we don't know.
This is true.
If he exists or not.
Maybe he does exist and he just doesn't know.
He doesn't look the same or something.
Yep. That Originally I was like, I was thinking he doesn't exist, and maybe that's a good.
I think they wrote it like that to go wherever they want. Like it could literally be Norman was like, my son is like not my son. He doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to look like James Franco. So for him, he won't really recognize his son.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting because they can set up so much for the future. So
imagine
many
him going
directions.
to school and his doctor, like his professor's Kurt Connors, and he's like, I know what happens to you in another universe, man. Like that would get him like, I gotta keep an eye on these guys. Keep an eye on these people.
Yeah, or like his professor could be Otto Octavius too, right? Like, I mean, they're both involved in that kind of stuff. So, or maybe Oscorp does start to exist. Maybe it finally gets founded. But
as a startup or something, startup or something.
I've also heard like people saying, what if this version of Peter starts Oscorp with Norman Osborn, because Norman Osborn can be young in this universe.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so there's so many different directions they can go with this. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And I think that's the biggest thing that makes the Spider-Man trilogy super exciting. And just the fact that No Way Home makes all of the movies in the trilogy better.
There was a rumor going around too that like the next plan is for another trilogy, and then in between each movie, getting one of those animated series. So we have Spider-Man Freshman Year coming out.
Oh, okay.
So then it sounds like then maybe between movies 4 and 5 or 5 and 6, there would be 2 other series.
Ooh, okay. Interesting.
About, not Freshman Year now, but like something else.
Right.
that helps fill in gaps somewhere else. So
that could be very interesting.
That'd be a way for Disney to get Spider-Man going and for Sony to keep using them in the movies. All right, so we both have this Captain America trilogy. I have First Avenger, again, underrated gem. I remember seeing this one in theaters. You were probably 2 years old. I was in theaters.
I was 11. I was
in theaters watching this one. My dad was a Captain America guy. We were starting to build up to the Avengers. It was great. Everything was in the air. It was a great World War II film. I think it's very underrated when it comes to it. And I think a lot of people have started showing appreciation for it again recently because not a lot of people saw this movie in theaters. I mean, it made decent money, but it didn't make what they make now. And people have caught up with it on Disney Plus, Netflix, wherever it was before. And I think people have kind of come around to this film. Winter Soldier, great movie, usually hailed as one of the best superhero movies of all time. It's a good personal story with, Steve having to see somebody that he thought he let down and was one of his best friends be a murder machine, and him having to try to, deal with that. And also the whole out of time moment, which we got a little bit of in Avengers, but we really get to explore it here with Winter Soldier. This was the first MCU movie my wife went and saw, by the way, in theaters. I had to show her. I didn't have time to show her everything else. I had to show her First Avenger before we went and saw this one. And then Civil War. This is, one of my favorite MCU films. This has all the threads from the previous Cap and Avenger movies, and just a great superhero comic book event with all the heroes, and the introduction of Spider-Man, by the way, in the MCU. So yeah, I think this is the just most consistent and best trilogy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely the most consistent. Like you said, First Avenger, great movie. I love the music in this one as well. That's one thing that I love the theme that they use in it. It just feels, it feels like patriotic, but also like superhero. Like it fits Captain America. I mean, I kind of have it stuck in my head right now as well. As you were like talking about it, I like the
which one, the Captain America song when he's doing his
no,
or
like
the
that.
oh yeah. I
that's
got the Captain America song when he's doing the bombs and
USO
the bullet in your
tours.
best man's gun.
Yeah. I love that movie, and it just shows like it gives so much information about Steve Rogers, like that benefits his character in the future. Like he never gives up, no matter what. Like, and that's set up
the
all the way through.
dance.
Yep,
Sets up
exactly.
the dance that becomes an end game. Like that is beautiful.
Exactly. Like it's sets up so many story threads that are literally decades out from being completed, or not quite a decade, but very close. Still, it's really good. We get introduced to the Infinity Stones without, like, or at least most casual MCU fans at the time, no idea what it was about, but it introduces us to one of the big parts of the entire Infinity Saga, and I really enjoy that. I think it's great. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is my favorite MCU film. It's my favorite one. It has so much that I love about it. There's so many small things about it as well. Like, first of all, there's a lot of political drama in it, which I'm very into politics. It fits perfectly for me. So that's one thing for sure. I also really enjoy that they actually like introduce really Doctor Strange to the universe in this, because
the first reference.
They mention him, and that's pretty cool looking back on it. I also love the introduction to Sam. Sam is quickly becoming one of my favorite superheroes as well. So he's definitely up there. I think the like kind of friendship between Nat and Steve in this as well is really good. And it does a lot of heavy lifting for characterization for Steve and Bucky's character arc that eventually gets settled. And
the Nat thing really helps with the Civil War, when she lets him go and takes down Black Panther to let him go and stuff.
Exactly. Like
and their connection in Endgame and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So it shows so much good stuff really in this movie. And also the final act of this is one of my favorites. I love the battle scene on the helicarriers. Yeah. It's so much fun to watch, and it's so engaging. Because I have to mention this, because the Russo brothers direct this, there is the actor Danny Pudi, who plays Abed in Community, also makes a cameo in this, which I love. And
they put one in each of their films, didn't they? They've done like an Arrested Development reference in almost every one, and the actors from Community in every one. Because
the Dean from Community, which
Civil
Jim
War,
Rash,
or this one?
Civil War.
Okay.
Jim Rash is in Civil War, and is it Yvette Nicole Brown? I think in Endgame.
I think so.
And Ken Jeong is also in Endgame. I can't remember who they put in Infinity War, if anyone. But still, I really like that part of it. And I mean, well, I just really like this movie. It's like the one that I've watched the most. I think I've probably watched it 20 times. They put Brie Larson
too. They put Brie Larson in Endgame.
Yeah, exactly. So I've watched The Winter Soldier so many times because it's so good. It's just one of my favorite movies in general, outside of the MCU context as well. But then Civil War, I love that one as well. I saw it in theaters like 2 or 3 times maybe, which was the previous record of how many of movies I've seen the most in theaters before Spider-Man. But I really like this movie because it showcases so much interesting stuff, and it shows, we've always known there's a divide between the ideology of Iron Man and Captain America. Like from the Avengers movie, we've seen this, and we finally see what it really means and how it gets brought out in these characters. And so many characters get developed in this. Captain America gets the most development, obviously, but we get solid characterization for almost every character that's featured in this. So it does so much. While being a great Captain America movie, it's also a great just MCU movie because it does all of the work for these characters. And plus, I've got to mention that it has Ant-Man in it. So, I mean, that makes it a great movie already. And I think it's, it also nails down that humor to seriousness, ratio perfectly. Zemo, I know a lot of people who don't like him as a villain. I think he's fantastic because he's literally just doing this out of pure revenge, pure need for revenge, and no superpowers whatsoever. I think the way he goes about doing it is just, I mean, it shows it. It's just a cool villain. He's just a cool villain, I think, and it shows that that the Avengers have like a true toll on normal people who might seek vengeance, right? Like I think it's very interesting in that regard.
Created Batman?
What?
They created Batman?
Yeah.
Seeking vengeance.
Yeah. I really enjoy Civil War. Yeah, I mean all of these movies are just fantastic, but I will say that The Winter Soldier still takes the cake overall as my favorite of these three. Although Civil War is a close second, and First Avengers a pretty close third as well.
Yeah, I have Civil War as higher. Than,
that's fair. That's fair. I can see
as
it
much
as, well,
as people probably would be like, "What?" But yeah, I do. The smartest thing Marvel ever did was giving McFeely and Marcus McFeely and why am I blanking on Marcus and McFeely. There we go. Giving Marcus and McFeely the keys to the car, pretty much, to do Civil War and the Avenger films, and then pairing up with the Russos, I think worked really well.
Yeah.
And the Russos are in talks to come back, as we keep hearing. They really want to do Secret Wars, I think. So that'd be interesting. Or I think they would be really good if you got them and Marcus and McFeely back to introduce X-Men. I think that would be really good. They showed they can juggle a million characters. Yeah. I think that would be really great.
Yeah, I mean, in most of their movies that they direct, they're like handling 15 to 30
and they know that from TV because they handled Arrested Development and Community, which each have big casts. They had done Happy Endings, which also had a big cast. So I mean, they know how to fit everybody in when it comes to it. So let's create our own trilogies. So I made one that's just what I think is the strongest of the trilogies. And I've mentioned it for examples every time we did this. So I didn't really count this as one that I did. This is one of the 5 I've done. But it's not like my final submission, I guess, because I've given this away on so many shows. But I have Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame. These films have a consistent storyline. The Avengers break up. They lose while they're broken up, and then they come back together in Endgame to win. So I really feel like that would be kind of a strong storyline. And, they kind of fall apart in Civil War, which is like a loss. That's a loss for them. And then they lose again in Infinity War, and then just getting it all back together at Endgame, I think, can be very powerful. And I think watching those 3 like back to back to back is just a lot of fun. And in Civil War, you're at least introduced to most of the characters, and then Infinity War, you're going to get introduced to a few more. But mostly you were introduced to them all in Civil War. I think that would be, I call it the favorite films, meaning like I think that they were my 3 favorite before No Way Home, but I think this would be like the strongest trilogy you can make with a single story.
Yeah. I came up with 5. 2 of them are a little bit weaker than the others, but because I came up with them in like 5 minutes before this. But the one that I gave as an example of one is, I don't really have a name for it, but I think it works decently well as a trilogy. And it's 3 of my favorite MCU movies as well, before No Way Home as well. But Captain America: The Winter Soldier, it introduces you to this idea of like Shield and just the world in general is trying to get rid of threats before they even become a problem. And also gives you some good characterization for Captain America, which will be important later in this trilogy, and the Winter Soldier as well. Second movie is Ant-Man, because you got introduced to this idea of trying to get rid of threats before they happen. And then you see this happen. Someone shows up, someone gets this technology and starts showing up and causing things to happen. So, and the real linkage between this is that fight scene between Falcon and Scott. So I think that's what gets the linkage in between here really well. And then we go to Captain America: Civil War, because Ant-Man is in this, and I think it brings it together. It gets Captain America. It finishes Captain America's story arc to an extent, or at least gets you enough of it to like where you can understand him as a character, and also is just a fun movie. I think like if I was just to watch 3 movies, or if I was to recommend 3 movies to just get people into the MCU, with like that would be my 3, because I think it covers 3 different types of movies as well. You've got a serious one a more serious one that has some more heavy topics in it. You've got what functions almost like a comedy / heist movie in the center of that, and then you have an awesome, just like massive scale superhero movie. So I think it shows 3 distinct types of movies in the MCU, while also
that's the Falcon trilogy.
Yeah, kind of is. Yeah, that
kind of like that.
Is.
Yeah, or the Falcon Lang trilogy or something.
Yep.
I don't know, but he's not in the first one, but
yep.
Falcon is the through line throughout all of those films. Okay, I have the Black Panther Wakanda trilogy.
Okay,
are you ready? We start off with Age of Ultron. This is where Ulysses Klaue is introduced. Hear about vibranium. We hear about Wakanda. In fact, Bruce Banner reads it horribly off the monitor. Wakanda or whatever he says.
Yep.
We get Civil War introducing Wakanda politics. Okay, and we get to see Black Panther, and we get to see T'Chaka die. And then we get Black Panther. We see a happy ending at the end of Black Panther. He's starting to assimilate and open up Wakanda to the world. And I think that would be a pretty strong thing. But, you kind of just get hints of it in Age of Ultron. You get kind of the whole storyline of Klaue in there as well, because he dies in Black Panther. And, kind of getting what I would call like the Black Panther or Wakanda like setup trilogy, right? Like, this is, and unfortunately, we don't have, we won't have T'Challa going forward anymore after those Avenger films. So unfortunately, this is kind of like a promise left unfulfilled at a certain point. But I think that it's, one of the things that Black Panther and Civil War and some of these movies have done is they made Age of Ultron better with some of these hints and stuff. So I think kind of starting there and then kind of seeing it progress that way, I think would be really fun. It's like you kind of get teases of Wakanda again in Civil War, and then you finally see it and get to be all up in Wakanda.
All right. I'm gonna go with one of my weaker ones next. Just because.
Are you trying to say mine was weak?
No. because I want to get it out of the way. I want to get this one out of the way because it's one that I came up with really quickly, and I call it the Better Banner trilogy. So what we should have gotten for the Hulk, and it's Avengers. Our real introduction to the Hulk, I'd say, because it's a different actor. One of 2 actors, I think, only in the entire MCU to get changed midway, like after being introduced. So, and then we shift over to Avengers: Age of Ultron. We get a little bit more of Bruce Banner in that one. We get to see the Hulk in like like being mind controlled as well, and then finishing it off with Thor Ragnarok because
And what'd you call this one?
The Better Banner Trilogy.
I was gonna say maybe the Build Hulk Better or Build Banner Better.
That works too. That works. That works pretty well as well. But yeah, I
for
think,
your political science.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it builds Hulk's character pretty well. Obviously, he gets more characterization in Infinity War and Endgame, but I feel like with those three, that's like the closest we have to an actual decent Hulk trilogy. Which is unfortunate because I wish they did a little bit more with him. But I maintain, like I said when we covered the Thor trilogy, that's one of the best portrayals of Hulk as a character, I think. So,
and for people confused, like why is Hulk so popular and why did they never make another film? It's because Universal owned the distribution rights. So kind of like the Sony thing, but Sony has rights to make the movies as well. Universal can't make a Hulk film, but if Marvel makes it, Universal has to distribute it. There's been rumors that has kind of ceased to exist now. Maybe that's why they're able to do She-Hulk. People are, but I think they'd still be fine with doing the TV show. But it seems to be that's why he would have to be in like Avengers or Age of Ultron and Thor. He wasn't able to do his own movie. I mean, like they could make it, but then Universal's getting a lot of the money, and Disney wouldn't want that. So they're like, we'll just fit him in with all these other movies then. So for people that might be confused, okay, I have the Avengers Initiative trilogy. Captain Marvel, starting it off here.
Oh, okay, that's
Fury,
not what I expected. That's not.
This
what
is
I
where
expected.
Nick Fury gets the idea for the Avengers. He's going to name it after Carol. We get Iron Man 2, where we see Fury really start to build this with Black Widow and asking Iron Man to be a consultant. And then we're going to get Avengers 2012, where we actually get them put together. I think that could be fun.
Yeah, that's
try it out.
Solid.
Watch those. People at home, watch those and see if it creates a story. I didn't get a chance to test it out.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. I think I was expecting you to go Iron Man, Captain America, the First Avenger, and Thor, but I think that one works better than the one that I was thinking of when you.
Yeah, that one's just phase one, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. But the next one that I've got is another one that's a little bit weaker, so I'm getting it out of the way. Which is the Galaxy Trilogy, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and then Infinity War. It does most of the work for like characterizing the Guardians characters, and while it doesn't have the resolution in Endgame, given that Rocket is the only Guardians character, or Nebula as well, I guess, in Endgame, I think that these three, until we get Guardians 3, right, is the best way to really get the Guardians of the Galaxy and their full story. Because you also see, Gamora's fate in this as well, right? So you have that information about what members of the Guardians of the Galaxy are left after up to where we are in the MCU.
And you Thanos in the first one, then you get Thanos at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So it gives you Thanos as a character throughout it. You don't have to see the really ugly version of Thanos from the original Avengers movie.
Oh no, he looks so good.
I don't know.
So good.
Maybe it's because it just like going back and watching it, it doesn't look consistent, which makes it strange going back to it. So I guess that's a third actor that they technically changed then for Thanos.
Well, yeah, I don't think that really counts. They did it as like a stunt guy or something, I think, that they just put behind there real quick for the 3 seconds. But yeah, I don't know. I think, was that one of the ones you said was another weaker one, or another one that you already had?
That was one that I just came up with quickly.
Okay,
it's not as it's an easier one, right?
I thought about that my issue was then I always wanted to fit Endgame in there, and then it was 4 movies, and I ran up on this a few times throughout trying to pick some of these movies. I'd even thought like trying to do like well, no, that one could work. I was trying to think of a few that I was constantly running up against that I'd be like, oh, I need to fit these. Like I was thinking Doctor Strange, and I thought Strange, Infinity War, Endgame, but then I wanted to stick No Way Home somewhere, and I was like, I can't, like, and it was very hard. We'll have to do like a quadrilogy at some point because I have some ideas for those, but no, we'll have to re-update this when Volume 3 comes out. Or Ant-Man 3 will come out first. No, they come out the same year. So we'll have to do that. We'll have to come back anytime there's a third one and re-rank our movies and then talk this out. Okay. I have the Ant-Man trilogy.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Ant-Man, Civil War, Ant-Man and the Wasp. So this is the start of Scott Lang's journey. And then him, we kind of see hope in the first one. We see the in Ant-Man and the Wasp when he gets in jail, and the home arrest and how things are kind of distant between them, and then that kind of getting patched up at the end. If you just don't watch the end credit scene where they dust, I think this is a really good through line of 3 films as well.
Right. Yeah, and the next one that I have, I went with the Doctor Strange trilogy for now until we get Multiverse of Madness in like 4 months, but. That's Doctor Strange, Infinity War, and No Way Home. It's a little weird because it leaves out Endgame in there. But I feel like if you're just looking for information about Doctor Strange, right? Like if you just want to get like enough characterization about Strange, then those are the 3 best movies to do it. Because Endgame, I mean, he's there for a little bit.
Yeah, can you say the last 30 minutes of Endgame are like that? Like Stitch?
Yeah,
can we
right?
stitch together like he dusts at the end of Infinity War and then we go right to the portals scene in Endgame and then we stop it when Tony snaps and we don't see Strange anymore and then we go right into No Way Home.
Yeah, I mean like that's the thing that makes it a little bit I was about to say strange. That's a pun.
Or do we combine Infinity War and Endgame into one movie and say, there you go, and we could have these 4 films, no problem.
I feel like that's cheating in the spirit of this, but I feel like if I was to leave out one, Endgame, if you're just looking for information about Strange and you just want to know his character, then I think that's the best way to do it for now. With the original Doctor Strange, then Infinity War, because you get a lot of great information about Doctor Strange in Infinity War, and then No Way Home. And also I think it doesn't have too much it doesn't have too many references to Endgame, I think, in No Way Home, right? Like it'll be kind of weird going from
to Endgame.
Yeah, like going from Infinity War to No Way Home and being like, oh, they're back now.
Yeah,
like
true.
That's the only weird part, but otherwise, like, like the line where Strange is like, yeah, we fought to save half the world together. Like you can say like, oh yeah, they fought together in Infinity War.
Right. And they mentioned that they turned back time to get everybody back. They do mention that in No Way Home.
So I think they do enough to explain like if you're just watching this without context of Endgame, you're like, oh, okay, so they use time travel to get everyone back. And I think that it works as a trilogy. It might not be as airtight as the last one that I have that I came up with, but I'll save that one.
All right, so here's my last one. This is a fun one. All right, I got the Wong trilogy.
The Wong trilogy.
I got Doctor Strange, Infinity War, and Shang-Chi.
Nice. Okay.
Just consistent Wong. I was like, you could put No Way Home here, but he's not as much. He's in Shang-Chi at the end credit scene. He's also in there when he's at the the fight thing that they're doing. And then, the end credit scene, the last end credit scene where they're singing as well. So I think this is a fun Wong trilogy. We know he likes singing from Doctor Strange when he's singing Beyonce.
Yep.
Infinity War, we get a little bit more serious, but even then, while he does fight in Endgame, he bows out in Infinity War, and he's like, I gotta watch the Sanctum. I'm out. You're done with him then. And then when you introduce him again in Shang-Chi, it's not like, oh, was he dusted? Don't worry about any of that. It's just like, boom, right into the next movie.
Right. Okay. That's a pretty good one because Juan is a great character. So there we go. My last one isn't necessarily unified by a plot line, but it's unified by a theme. And I've called it the Suit Around the World trilogy.
Okay.
And so for these ones, I mean, you can watch these theoretically in any order, which I think makes it kind of interesting. But obviously one of them in there is Avengers Age of Ultron, right? The suit around the world that they mention, it shows one interpretation of it. It shows Tony and Bruce Banner's interpretation of how they're going to accomplish that, to achieve security around the world, right? And it shows, the Avengers trying to get rid of problems before they actually happen. I also have Captain America the Winter Soldier because I think that even though the helicarriers, right, are a Hydra plan,
taking out the threats.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of theme, right? You're trying to address things before they can destroy the world. And so I think that those fit together. And then I was like, okay, there's got to be another movie that fits within this same kind of theme. And I thought, okay, what's another way they're trying to do this? And what I came up with was Doctor Strange as the last one, because I feel like that kind of shows the sanctum and magic and the mystic arts as this suit of armor around the world and how that works. How it explains the sanctums all connect. And if one of them falls, then it allows all of these other threats from other worlds to come in and threaten the earth. So I think it showcases, these different ways that the universe is kind of protected by these superheroes, or is attempted to be protected by different things, whether that's for good or bad reasons. And I think it shows, all of those movies actually show a pretty good balance of the good parts and the bad parts of that. Like, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, obviously infiltrated by Hydra. So that's bad. But, it also is started with good intentions by Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Like, so they have like a decent idea of what they're trying to do. And then, Age of Ultron, similar idea. Tony and Bruce, they want to create something to stop threats before they can happen. But it goes haywire and becomes a destructive AI. And so we see the pros and cons of that. And Doctor Strange as well. We see the good parts of this, but we also see the Ancient One who's supposed to be protecting all of these, using magic from the dark dimension to sustain all of this, and shows that every decision to try and protect the entire world comes at a price. And I think that's the main unifying theme between all of these.
The one I was just thinking about that I said, like, oh no, that could work, was, and in case you had it, I had Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame, telling Thor's story there.
Yep.
And also the Hawk. It tells the Hawk story too. It tells both of theirs, because Hawk in Ragnarok is getting tired of being the one that always has to fight, right? He loses. He's at an all-time, I think, high in Ragnarok after being champion. He gets his butt kicked by Thanos and says, I'm not going to take the beating for Bruce anymore. Withdraws himself, and then, the Professor Hulk stuff. So I think it shows both of their arcs pretty well in those three films.
Yeah.
And then another one I was trying to do this just to throw a wrench and everything, was the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, and No Way Home. But then without Spider-Man 3 because of Sandman and stuff like that. So you could do Amazing Spider-Man 1, 2, and No Way Home for the Andrew Garfield experience.
Right. The Andrew Garfield experience. I like
his new band.
Yep.
But yeah, so if anybody has any ideas for theirs, I don't want to take them all. So if people do have some original ideas that we haven't said, email us marvelplusrecaps@gmail.com or tweet on Twitter at TO Infinity Saga, Facebook.com/Infinity Saga. And look, we might come up with some more ideas to fill out some episodes here. To our knowledge, like we said at the beginning of the show, we don't know when the next thing is. So just trying to think of some things. I know before you had posited some Avenger cartoons or like Earth's Mightiest Heroes or stuff like that. At some point on here, I'm probably going to have to do an X-Men recap for the cartoons because Marvel Studios is making another season now that we got official word of, and the actors have actually been recording their lines. The guy who tweeting out some pictures of him in the recording booth and stuff, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, but we have some stuff that we can do that way, or like I said, I think at the beginning of this show or last show, if we get Jack on to talk some of those Daredevil comics that he's got, or maybe I read some of those Doctor Strange ones or the Ant-Man ones you have, and we can kind of do 3 episodes of that at some point. Yeah. Over the year, because we're also probably going to have some gap in the schedule with some of these shows and movies because we just don't know at this point.
Yeah, well, 2021 was filled with so much content that it was inevitable that it couldn't be maintained forever. Also almost, the COVID kind of crunched everything together. So
almost a year ago, I started doing the WandaVision recaps, and then we were pretty nonstop, and we'd have like maybe 3 weeks off between certain stuff, and then we would be right back in the thick of it. Right now, we have no idea. I mean, if Moon Knight is March, we still have like another 2 months to kind of fit stuff in, which is 8 weeks of podcasts or so. So I mean, if we were to do weekly, we may not. Sometimes I take a week off or whatever for this because there's just no news going on. But yeah, if we get some news on some of these release dates, I'll at least do a solo episode, jump on and talk about that. But I want to thank Jack for coming on again. Where can people find your stuff at, Jack?
Yeah, well, I've got a soccer podcast at Final Third Show on Twitter. If you're interested in that at all, it's also Final Third Show on Instagram. I talk about soccer from all around the world with one of my friends, AJ, on there. It's a great podcast. Just hit our 1-year anniversary. So if you're interested in that, I'd recommend checking that out. And then you can also check out my personal Twitter at jcprasad16. I post about some Marvel stuff on there. I've been posting some reflections on the Marvel comics that I've been reading, as well as, just random thoughts about other things. Sometimes politics, sometimes Disney, sometimes public transportation, sometimes a mix of all of them. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out there.
Yeah, really, you and AJ have really been on the public transportation kick this week.
Yeah, public transportation is great. Use it. It's fun.
Yeah. I don't know what I was gonna say. I'm found somewhere as well. I already did the show ones, but if you want to follow me at Cravens86 on Twitter. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks again to Jack for jumping on here, and I hope everyone has a great day. Like he said, we talked. He has a soccer podcast. I have a soccer podcast as well. And we just did the starting 11s for that. So if you skipped that one to listen to this one, that was last week. So you can go back and listen to us name starting 11 for a soccer team consisted of MCU heroes. So that was a lot of fun. But once again, thanks everybody for listening and have a great rest of your week.